The weather hasn't been really good, so I decided that I will do something indoor and show you. Maybe it's time to play with the pigments. Let's go. One of the things you can do in a rainy day is that you could try to play with pigments that are less used on your palette, or maybe try some of the combinations and see what are the results. I want to get a bit more of a granulating effects on my pigments, and sometimes I play with my pigments just to see how they react, because they, after all, would be a little bit like playing with your chemistry set. So anyways, just play. Now, when you wash a single shape with a single wash, single pigment, in this case lemon yellow, nothing to shout about. It's a beautiful wash. But you could also, for example, if you take that lemon yellow and then you try to load another pigment. Okay, one of the things that you need to remember is to put sufficient pigment to the first wash so that it has enough pigments to interact with the second wash. The amount of pigment that you put in matters, so you do want to experiment and try. So here, lemon yellow and permanent alizarin crimson mix on the paper, not on the palette, but on the paper itself. The second wash, I mix the two colors on the palette and I put it next to each other. You will see a slight variation or a little bit different between the outcome of the two wash. The first is where you load lemon yellow and add permanent alizarin crimson wet on the paper. The second one is you mix the two pigment thoroughly and then you put it on the paper. The results will be somewhat different. They will dry with a bit of a different characteristics and behavior. Something to try. Just so that I don't forget what I have done. I very easily forget these days. I would write it down, lemon yellow with permanent alizarin crimson. And the first one is where I put it, mixing it on paper. And the second one where I mixed it on the palette. Okay, in this lesson, what I would like you guys to try is to play, to mix on paper itself, not on the palette. Pigments or combination of two pigments or three pigments that you seldom used, things that doesn't quite make sense. So in this case I'm going to try lemon yellow with lunar black. Lunar black is a very granulating colors, slightly on a greenish black if you like, and then loading on yellow, it creates this beautiful granulating mix. I can't think of a time I would use this mix to represent any reality, but you never know, right? I mean, you're playing with it and you could have some ideas that you never really thought of when you're playing with pig. And because it is so wet, it's going to take a while to dry. I'll show you the results after it has dried. Maybe I'll take a photo and I'll post it somewhere. But in any case, the next one, maybe let's play with, say, quinacridone roast, which is a beautiful red. I love this color. It's a pinkish red. Sort of hot red if you like. While it's still wet, I'm going to drop in a beautiful Carbozel violet. It's a very beautiful violet, very aggressive, darkish almost, somewhat staining. And I think those combination, well actually I've used this combination before, so it's not quite rare, but nevertheless it's a nice combination to play with. If you see the results, it's just a beautiful shade of violet, pinkish on the side if you like, and you could use it for many of the floral sort of colors, floral, and also if you want to make your painting a little bit very sort of pinkish, that could be one of those that could use for shadows. Let's try another combination. Let's use New Gamboge, which is a bit more of a warmer yellow. One of the things that you got to remember when you're playing, don't skimp on the pigments. In other words, put as much pigment as you can, and since you're just playing, you could really get some really nice outcome if you are not being sort of skimping on your pigments. So here it is a New Gamboge with French Ultra Marine. Notice that it doesn't really become very very green, although there's a bit of a greenish. It's yellow and blue, so you should get green. Because you're mixing it on paper, the two pigments are still very visible. So it's still bluish and still yellowish. The next one is Queen Gold with a drop of cadmium orange. Cadmium orange, as you know, is transparent. It's opaque, very very opaque. Whereas the Queen Gold is very transparent. I think the opaque has just overtaken it. In overpowering the base color, if you like. And I think that's one of the characteristics. Opaque colors are just very hard to handle, generally speaking. It's overpowering, and when you drop too much opaque colors, it just takes over. Okay, the next one, let's put in cobalt. Cobalt, of course, is a neutral when it comes to value. It's right dead in the center. I'm going to drop in its opposite, which is cadmium orange. This combination I use a fair amount as well, but I wanted to try to see whether I could load it slightly differently and see what's the result of having mixing it on paper, and whether I could have them separate naturally, as the pigment themselves may not mix well. It's just floating about together in a puddle, right? So when they are doing that, they could give you an interesting outcome, granulating even, and maybe even some sort of nice texture. Now I'm using neutral tint as a base. It's very dark, and I'm going to drop in the orange, which is cadmium orange, in full load, if you like, a lot of pigment, that is. And then I'm going to try to load in another color, cadmium yellow. So neutral tint with two opaque on it, and we'll see whether it can get me a wisp of opaqueness floating in a puddle of neutral tint. Now here you go. So you can try various combination in your palette, colors that you don't really use, colors that and combinations that you don't typically do on a rainy day. It's raining out there, and I think it's horrible because I really want to go out. But here's the results. It's not all completely dry, but you could see the various texture that you could make with this play. I hope you enjoy this episode and try it. Okay, bye for now.